Welcome to Homeschool Nolan, here to help you navigate learning in the digital age. It's summertime. Kids are out of school. But if you're a homeschooler, the learning never stops. And last week, my wife asked if we should have all three of our kids, ages 12, 9, and 7, to learn coding by enrolling them in an online coding class. Now, I was actually a bit surprised she asked me this because, one, coding as a profession doesn't seem as promising as it was just a few years ago. And two, I always thought that coding was one skill where anyone who was motivated enough to learn how to code could learn how to do so on their own without needing to take a class. In this video, I'd like to talk about why, despite all the headlines about AI replacing software engineers, it's still worth learning to code, and how learning to code has changed in the age of AI. First, I like to say that it's still definitely worth it for kids to learn how to code. For one thing, coding teaches important problem-solving skills. It teaches you how to break a complex problem into smaller, more manageable steps, and to think logically to find a solution. It also encourages creativity as you try to build new software applications. And you also learn how to accomplish tasks given limited resources. So, even if you don't end up doing coding for a living, you at least become a better problem solver with your mind. Now, from a career standpoint, learning to code alone won't get you a high-paying job like it might have just 5 years ago. I think coding has become one of those skills where having it alone won't get you ahead, but not having this skill may cause you to fall behind those who do. It will be a lot like reading and writing. Nobody's going to hire you just because you know how to read and write. But if you don't know how to read and write, you simply won't be able to compete against those who do. Now, because our world has become one where so many systems we depend on run on computer code, having knowledge of coding will help you understand the world we live in. Now, that said, coding is definitely one skill where it's easy to learn on your own, assuming you are motivated. There's so many books, videos, and web pages out there that any individual can access to learn coding. Over the years, I've noticed that the people who were the best programmers were mostly self-taught. These were people who would stay up late into the night coding, not because they had to, but because they enjoyed it. If you're really motivated, you will want to learn it at your own pace and not be held back by a course syllabus or class schedule. Again, the key here is motivation. If you're motivated to learn a subject, you will learn it much better. And that goes for learning any subject. Now, as a homeschooling parent and teacher, I feel like one of my most important responsibilities is motivating my kids to learn. But it isn't always easy. For example, my 12-year-old grew up with screens around him, and I've always tried to encourage and motivate him to learn how to code. I got him books like these, Coding for Kids, and tell him that instead of just using the games and the apps built by others, maybe he should try learning how to build apps of his own. But to my dismay, he hasn't yet shown any passion or real motivation or self-initiative to learn coding on his own. He's still more interested in gaming than programming. That's why my wife suggested that perhaps if we signed up our kids for an online coding class, maybe if they at least got exposed to the world of computer programming through a teacher, they will discover the joys and appreciate how fun it can be and become motivated to learn computer coding. Now, I actually listed in on one of the free trial lessons, and I thought it was a pretty good intro if you're a beginner. Yet, at the same time, I felt that the stuff they were teaching, like what is a variable, could easily be something you can learn on your own. So, in the end, my wife and I decided not to enroll our kids in that online coding class. While we feel there is definitely some value in these courses, we didn't think it was worth the cost considering all the free available resources out there. What we really need is not a class or teacher per se, but more self-motivation. And not just for my kids. Again, as a parent and a teacher, I need to be more motivated to communicate the value of learning coding or any subject to my kids. By the way, if you're interested in your own self-paced class on programming, check out study.com. Study.com offers engaging self-paced online classes in Python, Java, C, and C++, not to mention thousands of other courses for K through 12. I use it to support my son's homeschooling as well as my own supplemental learning. Use the coupon code HomeschoolNolan and get 30% off the first 3 months. Check out study.com today. Now, whether you take a class or teach yourself, I believe what it means to learn to code has changed a lot due to AI. See, when I first learned how to program a computer as a kid many years ago, I started by programming in BASIC and Pascal, two programming languages that we never really hear about anymore. In college, I learned C. Then after college, I learned Java, PHP, and Perl. Today, I mostly program in Python. Well, actually, I should say I mostly read or try to study Python code written by others, and then I try to modify and debug it for my own projects. Rarely do I write code from scratch now. Instead, the real skill I need today is to be able to read and understand code written by others, whether it's a human or AI, and see if I can adapt it for my own projects. And increasingly, this code written by others is increasingly written by AI. You've probably seen headlines about how AI is already writing much of the code for software companies and how this trend will only accelerate in the months ahead. What this means is that companies will still need people who can read and understand the code these AI systems are producing. Rarely does code just work for the first time when you try it, whether it's written by a human or AI. But in order to read and understand code, you of course have to learn to code. In other words, an important reason you learn to code is so you can read, troubleshoot, and debug code written by others. And while Python may be a popular programming language today, people are saying that it is English that will become the most common programming language. Anyone who has used AI chatbots like ChatGPT knows that you can instruct or prompt these AI systems with natural, plain-spoken language like English. At first, this may seem really easy for most everyday prompts. But if you want to prompt the AI system to write more complex code as part of a bigger project, that takes skill. And this is called prompt engineering. And it's part of a new trend called vibe coding, where you use natural language to get the computer to write the code you need. I believe that just as everybody today knows how to use email or smartphone, our kids will need to grow up learning how to at least be able to do some rudimentary prompt engineering or vibe coding if they don't want to fall behind their peers. So in summary, despite what you may be hearing about AI taking over software engineering jobs, learning to code is still important. In fact, I would argue that's probably even more important than ever if you don't want to fall behind. But remember, coding itself has changed. So whether you decide to take a class or learn on your own, it's important that you be aware of the latest trends so you can adapt. And I hope this video has helped you as you try to decide what's best for you and your kids as you try to help them navigate learning to code in the age of AI. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to click subscribe for more videos like this one. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.